So we'd just like to welcome you all this evening, and also just aware that a lot of you have or would be in lockdown at the moment and how sucky that can be. So thanks for coming along this evening. Hopefully it's helpful, and also just letting you know we get it. It sucks. It sucks for us too, but we're here, and we are here and hoping to help in whatever way we can. And before we begin, I just wanted to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land. For me, I live and work on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and also would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to anyone who's here with us who identifies as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. So tonight, or this evening, we are running a mini mock. This is actually very exciting to me because it's one of the first, in fact, I think it's the first time we're running a mini mock, particularly for our partners and for our already Halad students. So super exciting. It's nice to know so many of you in attendance, and hopefully it's nice and chill and a good practice for all of you to just get a little bit of content and be able to enjoy some time working on it together. So feel free to put on your cameras if you like, or feel free to interact so that I don't feel like I'm talking into the abyss, and hopefully we'll have some fun. And I think most of you would know a fair bit about Halad to Health by now. Hopefully you enjoyed that little clip that we just played about some of the things that we do in this space in the Philippines and that we did over the past year, which was a bit constrained because of the pandemic. But also just for anyone who's new or joining from one of our partner clubs who this might be your first Halad event that you've attended, whilst we do provide GAMSAT services, we're actually not predominantly a GAMSAT company. We are rather a not-for-profit that runs sort of health education missions in the Philippines, and we do that by providing affordable GAMSAT tuition that then goes to our impact in the Philippines. So some of the things that we do over there is involved with young people just like you and enabling them to access greater health literacy. And so in the past year, we've been able to reach over 2,500 students and provide over $20,000 worth of resources and courses for them so that they can have access to things that they usually wouldn't. And one of those being what we showed in the video just before, similar to what we'd have as Headspace or Medicare providing free mental health sessions over in the Philippines, which has been really helpful for them so far. And they're really grateful for it. So thank you so much for coming along and being part of our Halad family and community. So I wanted to introduce you to the tutors that will be helping me run the session tonight. So hopefully, I think most of you would know me by now. So I'm Sarah. I run the GAMSAT services at Halad. I also tutor in section 1 and 2, and I'll be running section 1 this evening. I've done 3 years of medical school, so a little bit more seasoned in it, and you're welcome to ask me any questions that you like, and happy to help. So tonight we also have 2 new tutors with us. So we have Jasmine, and she has just started her first year of med at Monash. And maybe tonight, if you're lucky, you'll get to see 1 or 2 or both of Jasmine's cats. So keep your eyes out for that. And she'll be running you through section 2. And then we also have Kevin, who is in his 2nd year of med at Uni Melb this year. And as you can see in the background, embarrassingly for him, because he told me not to point it out, his lovely Matchbox car collection, which hopefully will be a great investment for him in the future. So if you want to ask about Matchbox car investing, then ask Kevin all your questions about that. So just before we kick off, we've just got a few in the waiting room. I might just let them in. Terrific. Okay, just before we kick off, I think a few of you would at least know me by now from classes or just coming along to events. But for us, it's really important that we don't just have students coming along who are here for good GAMSAT scores, but also so that you can feel supported in your journey to not only getting into medicine, but becoming a fantastic medical professional. And we have this message here from one of our previous students, and he was obviously very excited and very proud of such a great score. But I guess I just wanted to touch very briefly on the purpose of GAMSAT scores and getting a good GAMSAT score and what that all means. So definitely, as tutors who have sat the GAMSAT before, we are very proud of all of our previous successes and all of the things that we've been able to do because of that and share with all of you because of how well we did in our GAMSATs and making it into med. But I guess just keeping in mind that success in this space and in the GAMSAT space isn't necessarily about a score. And whilst a lot of us received scores in very high, the top 1-2%, it's really not about that. And it's about helping you understand the GAMSAT and helping you understand how you can succeed and how you can have the best future possible as a healthcare professional. So whilst we might not always personally project what our scores were in the GAMSAT, you're always welcome to ask, but that's not really what we're about. We're more about helping you to achieve your best and work out what success means to you. And hopefully we can help you do that. So on that note, this evening, hopefully you'll get a little bit of a chance to try some GAMSAT related questions or some GAMSAT questions in an environment that's more like what it would be like sitting the GAMSAT. So a little bit different to what it might be like in our classes if you're one of our students. But tonight we will have sort of mini mock sections for each of the GAMSAT sections, and then the tutors will spend some time explaining the results to you. So for section 1, you'll get 15 minutes. This is actually incorrect. You'll do 10 questions tonight, and then I'll go over some explanations. For section 2, we'll go over a little bit more when we get up to that, how much you're expected to write. But don't worry, you don't have to write a whole essay. And then Jasmine will run you through some tips there. And then section 3, again, this one will only be 10 questions tonight, and Kevin will run you through that. So on that note, before we get going, I just thought I would gauge from everyone how you're all feeling about the GAMSAT right now. Okay, great. So, oh, I've lost my screen. There we go. So we've got a little bit of a range. Most of you sitting around a 2, a 3. For the 2 of you who are keen to sit it tomorrow, feel free to run the session tonight. And for the 2 of you feeling completely screwed, maybe you can buddy up and get some contagious confidence. But definitely fine to be feeling a bit of a range of emotions about sitting the GAMSAT. We've all been there, and hopefully this is a good little bit of practice for you tonight. So on that note, let's get started. I am going to put some links in the chat for you, and once I'll give you a couple of seconds to get those open. And while you do that, I'll get up a timer. All right, and can we just have thumbs up to let me know if those links are all good? Terrific, amazing, great. Okay, looks like we're good to go then. So I'm going to give you 15 minutes. I'll let you know when you've got about a minute to go. And those links, the top one will be to the questions, and then the bottom link, if you can put in your answers there, so then we can see what everyone put down. Cool. All right, and you can start. Okay, fabulous. So just to begin, it looks like you didn't find that too tricky. Hopefully that wasn't too stressful. So just to sort of show you overall, we've got a median of around 6, average of around 6.5 out of 10, which is pretty good. What we usually do with mini mocks is provide a bell curve of what your score would typically be. But usually we would provide that like while I'm going over the section 1, but because I'm going over it at the moment and I'm also doing the bell curving tonight, I'll send it out in the chat while you're doing section 2. So I'll let you know when that's all good to go and how to actually make sense of that when I do it. Great. if anyone has any specific questions you'd really like me to go over, feel free to let me know in the chat, or if you just have general questions as I go. But I'm going to spend about 15 minutes just picking out some things overall that I think would be helpful for you to notice, and some techniques with the texts that you just had a look at. And also just letting you know that you'll get explanations to all of these questions after tonight's event. So if one of your questions didn't get answered, you'll also get explanations. But already we can see this was roughly the distribution, pretty typical to get sort of a bell curve looking distribution here. And that questions 7 and 10 people found the hardest. So I'll make sure to spend some time on both of those. So just going to go to the actual question set. I wanted to start on the first text. It looked like that wasn't too hard for all of you, but I really like this text because it's a philosophical style text, and I think that there's a lot that you can get out of it. So I wanted to go over 2 important techniques that can help you with this kind of text. The first thing that's really important is to make sure that you're reading it actively as you go. Now, I know that all of you coming along to Section 1 classes will have already had this drilled into your heads from week 1, but it's really important with a text like this that you're following all of the key ideas. So in this first paragraph, or I guess the first thing you should be able to do is tell me this is what the text is about. And so I would say to someone, you know what, this text is about beauty and how all of us interpret beauty differently and have a different definition of what makes something beautiful. So that already indicates that that's what you'd be looking for in the text. So this first paragraph is very much about setting up that beauty is something that transcends time, that there's a lot of different versions of what makes something beautiful, and that beauty has components which are both subjective and objective, and that there are different features to what makes something inherently beautiful, or why someone would describe something as beautiful. And then it shifts to actually give you someone's opinion on it. In this case, it's someone whose name is Hume. And the opinion is that beauty isn't so much a quality of something, because everyone perceives beauty differently. And where one person might perceive something isn't beautiful or something is deformed or ugly, someone else will have a completely different concept of that. And then we have our famous Kantian theory coming in here, talking about how taste and cognition are slightly different things, and that we need to consider that there's aesthetics involved and it's not just about rational thought and cognition. And then we start to have this discussion around, but if beauty is just about the subjective sort of thoughts and opinions of the individual, then that doesn't really make much sense either, because if beauty was only subjective, then we probably wouldn't find commonalities in what people think is something beautiful, such as everyone thinks that sunsets are beautiful, regardless of whether it's subjective or not. So that there must be an objective component to beauty as well. So I guess what I wanted to point out is that your job is to be able to explain the text in your own words. Do you have to stop and actually explain the text? No. But if I asked you to, you should be able to in your own sort of interpretation of what you read, which shows that you were able to engage with the text in a helpful way. So I'm not going to spend too long on the questions because these ones didn't seem too challenging. I'm just going to, no, it's not telling me the rest. Okay, that's okay. But I think that the one that I think is most helpful to go over is this one here, a problem with subjective beauty. I would say that this question is a little bit vague in the way that it's worded a problem rather than the most pressing problem, but still this is a question that you could be asked. So a problem with subjective beauty is, and then asking yourself, where in the text did I find something on subjective beauty? And I would say in this case, most of the text is about subjective beauty and is about you defining what you think is beautiful to you. And so then going, well, where was there a critique of that? Or where was it recognized that there are sort of limits to that? And I would say that the main part where that happens is in this final paragraph here, where it's sort of being discussed if beauty is entirely subjective, then there are actually caveats to that. Sorry, I've just lost my part. Here we go. Yep. And so with that, I think with question 2, that there could be still, A still has some validity. However, this is also disputed. I can see how A would be a tempting answer, and quite a few of you did choose A as the answer option. However, I would say that D is a better answer because in this paragraph, it disputes A and says, well, it's not impossible to prove that something's beautiful because people do share common ideas of what constitutes beauty. So there must be something that actually sort of gives elements, or there must be some sort of element that drives what makes something beautiful sometimes or aesthetically pleasing, such as everyone agreeing that a sunset is beautiful. And so it doesn't mean that it's impossible to prove that something is beautiful to someone else. And there are many ways that people can describe that too. No worries. So let's go on now to Proverbs. Also, I know that this might feel very brief in terms of going through the text and going through the questions, and that's why we'll send you some explanations afterwards as well. With Proverbs, my number one tip or advice is to look at the proverb, and before you even look at the options, break down what the proverb means to you. And so saying it in your own words, saying it in your own language so that it makes sense, and saying this is what it means. You might even need to take it as far as creating an analogy so that you know in your mind what you're looking at. So question 7 looked like the kicker for this one. So let's start with having a look at this proverb here. The same boiling water that softens the potato hardens the egg. So what that says to me is that if you put something in boiling water, you can't determine whether it's going to soften or harden. It depends on whether you are a potato or an egg. I don't know if I would prefer to be a potato or an egg. I personally would rather be neither. But in theory, some people are potatoes and some people are eggs, and maybe some people are something else entirely. So then this proverb is saying that when people are placed in a situation, what they are made of and how they respond will determine whether they are softened or hardened by the situation. So let's have a look at the question options. Great. So whilst option B is quite tempting because it's like, well, potato is inherently made of something and an egg is inherently made of something, it doesn't make sense for a proverb to say that people would be in boiling water, that they only are able to respond based on what they're inherently made of. So whilst I would say that their qualities and circumstances may define or help their situation, or might control elements of their situation, I don't think that this proverb is saying that people are automatically subscribed to either being hardened or softened, depending on who they are automatically. It's more about when people are in that boiling water, what happens to them next? What do they allow to happen next? And that's why C matches better, because people's situation is more determined by how they then choose to respond. Do they let the boiling water harden them like the egg, or soften them like the potato? And thankfully, we're not intrinsically eggs or potatoes, so we get to make that decision. I think that's the confusing part, is whether you think it was more saying that it's people's inherent qualities, or whether it was saying people's circumstances beyond that. But because it's a proverb, keeping in mind that sometimes it's not as literal as it usually would be in, say, a factual text. And that's something that's really important in section 1. Yes, so could you explain why C is more appropriate than D? Yeah, excellent question. In adversity, option D says, in adversity, some will rise whilst others will fall. Whilst I don't think that the proverb is not saying this. Sorry, that's my dog. Okay, I think she's good. While I don't think that the proverb is not saying this, I also don't think it's as strong for C, just because the proverb isn't implying that hardening or softening is rising and falling. It's more implying people's attitudes and implying how people handle things and respond to things, as opposed to whether they rise or fall. I think it would more be like if they used an analogy which more or better aligned with good versus bad response, or a rise versus a fall, and then I would go more with D than C. So this is when questions in section 1 can get quite tricky, when it's not that one of the options is necessarily wrong, but more that one of the other options is better. Yeah, no worries. Cool. We've got a request to go through question 6. We'll see how we go with time, but we should be okay. because I think we've got about 5 minutes. Beautiful. So with the next one, we have a lovely little script. My recommendation with these, and I do think that this one's not too bad, but sometimes you might get a play script from something that seems a bit more Shakespearean style, and it can be really difficult to navigate. I recommend just practicing reading them out loud. Like sit at home, read it out. Maybe read it like with someone, rope someone into it, and like each of you take on a part, do a little bit of role play. And I know it seems and feels kind of silly, but it can help you to really understand like what's going on, what are you feeling. In classes this week, if you're doing section 1 classes, we also did a lot of like on character profiling and understanding the characters. So using some of those skills as well can be really helpful. And I think that that's really helpful for the question that seemed to be the main struggle. Yeah, question 10, which was about the actual tone of the conversation. So my biggest tip with tone is exactly that, is read out the conversation and practice what's like listening to what's going on. So maybe we'll just look at the second half of the conversation, since that's what the question's about, between Jack and Algie. So it's more sort of here. And so it's asking, what's the tone going on here? And I'm actually just going to look at what at the question, what people, oh, that's not how it goes. Sorry. Question 10. Here we go. What people tended to choose. So it was mainly D versus A. Great. Yeah. So this is an excellent thinking pattern behind here, is that this idea of, do I go for A because I felt like the overall idea was it was a very like regal setting, or do I go for D because that's more the tone of the conversation? So firstly, go for D because it's asking you about the tone of their conversation, not the setting of the conversation. So if anyone was confused, if that was sort of what was tearing you between A and D, was, oh, but it's in quite a regal and like pompous and proper setting. Just because it's in that setting doesn't necessarily mean that's the only reason or the only thing influencing the tone. And if you sort of listen to the tone going on here, it's actually more about like between friends. And I think that there are things sort of holding them back because they're trying to be proper, but most of all, it's them. You can tell that they sort of have some kind of friendship, but that they're part of the same social class within that friendship. So we've got things like, oh, like it's a pleasure, and oh, you know, just seeing some neighbors and like, what on earth are you doing there? And sort of really characterizing like a catch up between people who haven't seen each other in a while, but they're comfortable enough to talk about personal matters and to ask about those things, which is uncommon in a more regal setting if you're not on the same page and you're not conversing as friends, which is why I would rule out A, because the tone itself is not regal. However, to actually rule in D, looking at especially the aloof side of it, Jack is particularly aloof. And I don't want people being caught off guard thinking that aloof means that they're being proper, because it doesn't necessarily mean that. Jack could be being aloof, so sort of like distant and like vague about his answers, just because he doesn't want to say explicitly what's going on and why he was in the country and, you know, who he was sleeping with or whatever else. Not necessarily because it's a regal conversation. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there are elements that are really guarded. I actually think that Jack is quite guarded as well amongst his aloofness. I think it's more that it's not tactless. And so that's another really great point to bring, is that often in the GAMSAT, they'll give you one option, such as the word guarded, that really fits, and then the other option doesn't really fit, and not letting that sway you to go, yep, I'm still going to pick that one, because it is quite a tactful conversation. And you can also see that in that Algie doesn't push too much or pry for the information that Jack's not giving, and he maintains that distance in that conversation and in that friendship. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, and we just have a question as well. Can you quickly go through question 9? I didn't get it as he was saying, sir. Yeah, no worries. I think as well, there are lots of hints here about the social classes. One of the hints being that Lane is the servant and is from the servant class, and seeing how they interact. And Lane is very much saying sir as well, but also that the conversation is very much Algie having a chance to, or Algernon predominating the conversation, him having the opinions, him being the one that he considers something that he considers proper or improper, him dictating to Lane what he as a servant is supposed to say or talk about, that he doesn't want him to talk about it, etc. And then when Jack comes in, the tone shifts entirely and the conversation tone shifts. And so from that, you can already tell that there's no longer this class disparity there. So, and even here, dear Ernest is very different language to using the word sir. So I'm not sure if the question, maybe you got a little bit confused between whether it's asking about Jack or Lane. Lane and Algernon, definitely not part of the same social class, but it's very likely that Jack and Algernon are from the same social class because of the way that they speak and that shift in tone. All right, we might just like go back for a minute to question 6, since we had a question about that. So again, I'm going to ask you to see if in your head you can think of what this question, what this proverb is saying. So the proverb being, sweet are the uses of adversity, which like the toad wears ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel on his head. So it pretty much means that when someone faces a challenge, even though the challenge itself might be ugly or difficult, it's best when they're able to see the beauty in it and come out on top despite the ugliness of those challenges. And so hence the answer for question 6 is A, the importance of embracing life's challenges, because it's not so much that the things or the challenges or the adversities are the beautiful things in life appearing ugly. They genuinely are the crappy parts of life. It's just that opportunity, or taking that opportunity to still make them into something more beautiful and something more bearable, manageable, rather than actually that it was something beautiful to begin with. Hopefully that makes sense. With D, I find this is quite a distractor because it says inner ugliness can be disguised by outward beauty. And I think that that kind of matches more literally to this proverb of like the toad being like venomous inside and then having like a precious jewel. But honestly, I think toads overall are still externally ugly. But I guess if you got swayed by that, this is probably more of a literal translation of it, as opposed to it being that more philosophical side of it, which with Proverbs, the hint is that they tend to be quite philosophical. So in terms of that, yeah, no worries, all good. In terms of that, if you have further questions, we will send out explanations after this. The key thing I want you to take away from this is just some sort of, I guess, taking away each of those points I made about techniques along the way. So actively reading your more philosophical and longer texts, spending time putting proverbs into your own words, and when you have something that's more of a dialogue or a conversation, having a go reading it out loud potentially and paying note to the tone and profiling the characters. In terms of the questions themselves, you'll get some explanations, but if you have questions after you read over them, you're still confused about anything, feel free to email me. I'll put it in the chat in a minute for you as well. So we're going to shift gears now to section 2. What I'm going to do in a minute is hand it over to Jasmine, but just briefly, if everyone could put in the poll, could just answer these questions, mainly so we can get a bit of an idea of who sat the GAMSAT before here. Okay. All right, so we've got about half of you. This is your first time sitting it. So what Jasmine's going to do when she goes over section 2 is give you a little bit of a rundown on section 2 as well. But I've put the links in the chat for you. And on this first link, which says questions or prompts, there'll be a set of quotes or comments that you basically need to create a written response to. And it's up to you whether you want to write like a miniature essay. You'll have 20 minutes. So you can either write sort of a condensed version of an essay, or you can write part of an essay. So you can start and then just wherever you get up to after 20 minutes, submit it. So up to you how much you write. And then after that, Jasmine will go over some tips for you, and she'll also answer any of your questions and use one of yours as an example. Cool. So I'm happy to do the timer if you want. All right.
Yeah, that's good.
We're ready to go. Awesome. Thanks. Is everyone good with the links? All right, and you can start writing. Okay, great. So that's time. So I'm going to hand it over to Jasmine now so that she can go over the section 2 prompt with you.
Hi guys. I know Sarah kind of introduced me earlier, but I thought I'd just reintroduce myself. So I'm Jasmine. I am a first year med student at Monash. I also did my undergrad there and I sat the GAMSAT in 2020. So I was the first cohort to do it online. And I promise you it's not as bad as you think. I spent all summer preparing, thinking it was going to be in person, and then it ended up being online. But for some people it works. So good luck with your online GAMSATs. I guess in terms of section 2, because there are a few of you that never set the GAMSAT before, I thought I'd kind of just do a little brief intro about what section 2 is and how to approach section 2 before we go into an essay. I think Sarah's looking through to find one now. So in terms of section 2, it's called written communication. So the examiners are really just looking for you to communicate an idea to them well. You'll normally get 2 tasks, a task A and a task B, and more often than not, the task B will slightly be a little bit more personal than the first task, but you can still go with the same writing style or whatever you feel more comfortable doing. There's no like real distinction in terms of the examiners mark one a certain way and the other a different way. They're still marked exactly the same. I guess in terms of like writing an essay, I say essay, but it doesn't actually have to be a formal essay. You can write absolutely whatever you want. If you want to write a poem or a story, a creative piece, a reflective piece, you can write absolutely whatever you want in section 2. And I think that that's the best thing about section 2. I always like to say that section 2 is the one thing that you do have control over. You'll be thrown random questions in section 1 and section 3, but section 2 is the one part of the GAMSAT that you can kind of write about whatever you want, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're interested in, and it's the way to really get you across to the examiners. So take that to your advantage and write about you and whatever you're comfortable writing. I guess in terms of how they mark section 2, they're really looking for 2 main components. So they're looking at what is the kind of quality of the writing that you're producing. Are you generating good ideas? Are you getting those ideas across well? And then the second part is, I guess, the way that you deliver your ideas. So are you clear with what you're saying? Are you concise? Do you have a good flow of ideas and a good structure to your writing? So those are kind of the things that they're looking for. In saying that though, they all can be altered to however you write, as long as you are following, you know, what ASA is looking for. You can write a story or you could write an argumentative essay and still cover all the aspects of that. Just remember to keep linking back to the prompt or the theme of the essay and whatever ASA has linked. Oh, there's just a question, but that's okay. Perfect. Now, I don't know, Sarah, do you have an essay ready or not yet? Yeah, cool. All right. Let me have a look. Perfect. All right, I'm just going to start sharing my screen. I don't know if this is going to work. Okay, perfect. Can everybody see my screen? Cool. I guess before we get into the essay itself, I kind of just want to cover a little bit about the quotes that you get and the prompts that you get and how to kind of approach writing an essay when you first see them. I guess everybody's different in terms of whether you want to plan or whether you kind of just want to brainstorm in your head, and that's completely fine. It's up to you how you want to approach it. But the first thing that I like to do, and I think that most of our tutors here at Halad do the same thing, we kind of like to look at all the quotes and try to find an overarching theme as to what they're trying to say. By doing this, you can make sure that you're covering the theme or the prompt that ASA are really trying to get across, and that way you can link your essay back to that idea. So I guess in terms of this one here, we can see that, you know, a common theme across all the prompts was something along the lines of immigration or population. So if you got that, you were definitely on the right track. a lot of people ask whether you have to respond to a specific quote or whether you need to use a specific quote, and it's completely up to you whether you do or don't. Sorry, I'm just getting chat messages. It's up to you whether you want to answer a specific quote or not. You don't have to pick a quote, but if you do pick a quote, just remember that you still want to be responding to the overall theme. So I guess like if we were to pick a quote, you would probably see that, I guess this one here. So quote 3 doesn't actually physically say anything about immigration or population itself. So if you were to pick that quote and to write about that quote individually, you may potentially lose track and get a little bit sidetracked away from the theme itself. So it's fine to use it as long as you're constantly linking it back to that original theme that ASA have provided you with. I guess the next thing you do once you have an overarching theme is to kind of generate a contention. So a contention is really what you want to say or the opinion that you have about that theme. So it can be, you know, a personal view on it, it can be a political view on it, it can be whatever you want it to be, but it's really important that when you are writing an essay, you have, you know, a point of view that you're trying to get across. So by generating contention early, your essay doesn't kind of lose track of where it's going, and you can always link it back to that, what you're trying to get across to the examiners. I know that was probably kind of a lot, but just keep that in mind. We're going to use this sample essay here. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to read it. I haven't read it either, so we'll just take some time to read it, and then we will have a little bit of a discussion about some feedback regarding it. Okay, I hope everybody got to read through that one. So there have been a couple of questions in the chat. I'll quickly respond to those before I jump into some feedback. So one of the questions is, are we able to quote the provided quotes in your essay? You are definitely able to, but don't feel like you have to. So if it fits with your essay and it flows with your essay, you can put it in wherever you feel like. You can put it in your introduction, you can make it a topic sentence, you can just throw it in the middle of a paragraph as long as it fits with your essay, but don't feel like you have to force it into your essay either. And then there is another question about discussing my opinion on the use of I in essays. Given that these essays aren't the same kind of structural essays that you're probably used to writing, it's completely fine to use I. I've seen people write reflective pieces. I've seen people write letters. It's really your take on how you want to approach the section and whether or not you want to make it a little bit more personal and put things like I and me into your piece, or if you want to make it a bit more argumentative and kind of a little bit more objective in that sense. But it's completely fine to use the word I and me and we. However you want to approach a section is up to you, and you can make it as personal as you want or impersonal. Perfect. Okay, so In terms of feedback, I'm going to start with some things that I like about the essay, and then I'll go into a couple of things that maybe potentially can be worked on for next time. Overall, I think that the students done a really, really good job at getting across what they're going to say in their essay. So the first paragraph, the introduction, is very clear. I know exactly how they feel about immigration, and they've done a good job at constantly linking their piece back to the overarching theme. They've also done a really good job at signposting. So I can see that they have talked about, what immigration is, why immigration is good, but they've also provided a rebuttal in terms of how potentially other people may be opposed to immigration. Don't feel like you always have to put a rebuttal in, but it is, like in this piece, it's worked really well. It's shown that the student has considered both sides of the argument of immigration. And that's a really good thing to show to the examiners, that you're not just looking at something from one side, that you can, see things from multiple points of view. So I think they've done a really, really good job in the introduction. And from their first paragraph, they've definitely jumped into exactly what I thought that they were going to start talking about. So what the benefits of immigration have been, how immigration has contributed to our economy, and all of those kinds of things. The only thing that I could potentially say is that they have listed what they're going to say in their introduction, which is great for signposting, but you don't have to always do that. You can give a little bit of a snippet of what you're going to say. So kind of, something along the lines of, immigration could potentially have benefits, however, it may not, or something along those lines. Obviously, make it into a proper sentence, but you don't have to have exact full sentences, because it may take up time and words that you don't necessarily need. So just giving a brief snapshot of what you're going to discuss later in the essay is okay as well. I guess in terms of the first paragraph itself, there are a lot of facts, and the students provided a lot of information about where immigration is regulated, and how immigration works and that kind of thing. But I would like to also see potentially a little bit more of the students' opinion on immigration, or adding a little bit more, I guess, depth to their argument about why they think immigration is benefiting the economy. So things about the Department of Home Affairs, it's great that if you want to put that in, if you do know it, but don't feel like you have to be as direct with the facts underlying your arguments. Examples are definitely really good, but give a little bit more of an explanation as to what you think about this issue and why you think immigration is good. I'm just going to have a look at the chat quickly. Let's have a look. Okay. I got a question. Could you please give us an example of a creative piece for this theme? I'm not a very big creative writer, so it probably wouldn't be my go-to. But if you are a creative writer, you could write a story about immigration. You could write a reflective piece about how, if your family have migrated to Australia, or if your family have migrated to a different country, a reflective piece about how immigration has benefited you, or potentially how it has been detrimental to you. You can write a story about family migrating. You can write absolutely whatever you want, as long as it still links back to the theme of immigration. Then it works. Yes, so there is a lot of knowledgeable context in this essay. So don't feel like you have to do that. You're more than welcome to just state, you know what immigration is, and then explain how immigration has impacted our economy. You don't have to have extensive knowledge on the facts behind immigration. They don't expect you to know everything about the topic that they provide you with. They just kind of want to see what you know, what you think about it, and what it might link to in terms of some of your interests. So for example, immigration, how has this impacted potentially, how has this impacted jobs? How has this impacted rural communities? If rural communities is something that you're passionate about, finding a link to that. It doesn't have to be full of like context backing what you're trying to say, as long as you can get across what you're saying clear and concisely. How many sentences would you say the intro should be? That's really up to you. I definitely think, you want to start your intro off by making sure your contention is clear and potentially giving a little bit of a kind of standpoint and where you stand on the issue, and just a little bit of an intro on what you're going to discuss. I've seen intros that are 3 sentences that are more than enough. I've seen intros that go up to 8 sentences. So it's completely up to you how you want to write your introduction. And it kind of just depends as well, like what kind of essay you're writing. If it's a creative piece, don't feel like you need to have a huge intro into your piece. You can jump straight into it. Some people write poems and you don't even need an introduction for that. So just depends on how much you're writing and how important it is for you to kind of say the things you need to in your intro, so that the readers know exactly what you're going to say or discuss in your actual essay itself. How would you incorporate opinion with this? Could you remain factual and still achieve high marks? I think that one of the biggest things in section 2 is actually, one of the biggest things in section 2 is to get across what you're trying to say and what you think about it. The more personal you make it, I guess, the more interesting your essay comes to read. The examiners don't want to keep reading the same facts over and over again. If you can put your personal opinion into it, it'll make it more entertaining to read. You can definitely still achieve high marks if you remain factual, but I think that overall you will be able to score better if you're able to put a bit more of your own twist into it and kind of get your own sway across in terms of what you're trying to say and how it applies to you. You're welcome to whoever said thank you. In terms of quote 3, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. In order to make that quote itself link back to the theme, you would have to try to find a way to link it to immigration or changing population. So it does discuss change and how we have to jump into change. So you could potentially talk about welcoming immigrants and how that is having an impact. You could even talk about colonization and the effects that it has had on different cultures, different groups in society, and linking that to, did we jump into change? Did we join or did we take over? For my section 2, one of my major themes that I like to talk about is Indigenous health and Indigenous Australians. So if I was to use that one, you can always talk about something that's got to do with colonization and population, and then how we used change or how change has affected that. So just linking it back, I mean, change is definitely one of the sub themes associated with this. So as long as you're talking about change, that's great. But you do want to keep linking it back to the overarching population immigration type theme. Cool. Not everybody is going to get feedback on their responses just because we are short on time. But if you have submitted one that you desperately want feedback on, Sarah's email is in there. Otherwise, I'm happy to pop my email in there as well. I won't be able to go through and mark 40 students' essays, but if you do want feedback, then I'm happy to go through it and give it a little bit of feedback as well. We've hit 7 o'clock, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope that made sense. And if anybody has any other questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to hand over to Kevin, who is going to go through section 3 with you guys.
All right. Hi, guys. So I'm up last as with section 3, which is the science and mathematics section. Like the GAMSAT as well, it is up last, and everyone's always tired when you get to it. So stay strong, we'll get through this. and hopefully you guys will get something out of it. A little bit about me, I think we touched on before. I'm Kevin. I'm second year med at Uni Melb. I did my undergrad at Monash and then I became a trader and I jumped over. Other than that, section 3, I think is a lot about mindset. So if you take anything away from this or anything away that I say, take away that it's all about your mindset going into it. If you feel you're going to do well, then you've got a chance. If you go into it feeling like you're going to do badly, or you go into it negatively, then it's going to be a bit more rough. So other than that, you guys do have the questions. I think you guys are getting 20 minutes or 15 minutes, 20. Yeah, Liza's nodding me. So 20 minutes. I'll start that timer up. And I guess like other times as well, I'll let you know when you've got 1 minute left. Other than that, good luck, guys, and all the best. And you can start. All right, guys, and that is your 20 minutes. How do we go? If you did well or not well, just shoot a thumbs up or thumbs down in the comment or in the reactions for Zoom. Just gonna have a look at it. Thanks, I'll refresh that. All right. Give some more time for that to go through. And yeah, so there we go. That's your distribution there. You guys will get if I'm correct, a kind of bell curve, a kind of rough estimate with what your scores will line up to in terms of the GAMSAT later on. But it seems like we've got a pretty big spread. So let's have a look at frequently missed questions. So let's start off with question 1. First one, majority of a large portion of us got it wrong. Let's have a look at that. So I'm probably just going to go through the top 2 questions that you guys had trouble with, and we'll try to work through them. You guys are getting a document with all the answers and stuff for it, so don't stress out. So question 1. So question 1 is asking you to basically understand what's going on, or understand what's going on and then apply it using what is unfortunately perceived or expected knowledge. So it's expected that you guys know what the standard units are for this. So in this case, here would be like meters cubed or whatever. And the question asks, the standard unit of pressure can also be written as which one of these? So in order to that, you've got to go back to the question stem. And the question stem states that pressure is the same as force over area. So the same as, if some of you guys remember, F over A, or A like that. And then it also says that fluid is proportional to P. Now, fluid proportionality is never exact. So it's actually better to actually go for force over area. And that's what the question is alluding to. So step 1 is to recognize that you need to make use of the force over area part of the explanation. So you're going to know that you're going to have to somehow get the information you've got and express it this way. So force is equal to mass times acceleration. Standard units for that is kilograms and meters per second squared. And then area, by the way, if you guys are having trouble with this, just type in here if you guys don't like what I'm saying. Yeah, physics as per usual. Don't worry, I didn't do too well either. So anyway, area is meters squared, but in this case, it's I believe it's, no, so meters squared. Anyway, so you're going to try and get to this point here. So after that, you're going to start canceling out everything basically. M over S, oh God, undo, meters squared. So then you're going to go to kilograms, M squared. And that's just because this multiplies up here and this is an M on S meters. That's how your acceleration, meters per second squared. After that, meters cancel out. You get kilograms on meters second squared. Now, there's another part here that's going to be confusing as well. You're going to notice in the answers, I don't have a meters second squared. And that's where the standard unit of pressure can also be written as which of the following. And you're going to have to notice that this format here is the same as C. It's just C is centimeters per second squared, centimeters squared. So it's still the same things. Reason why the other ones aren't correct, basically it just boils down to the other ones aren't correct because they don't have all the information you need. So A, for instance, doesn't have the acceleration component, so second squared, so that's wrong. B has it with the meters in a different place, which is not correct either, so that's wrong. Likewise with D. So as you can see, C is the only answer that's in the same format as what you get when you simplify the information with the standard units. Bit long, a lot of assumed knowledge in it. It's physics as well. No one likes physics, to be quite honest with you, or at least I don't. So yeah, it's one of the questions that you need to have a tiny bit of knowledge, and you need to keep calm. You're allowed to write on the page, I believe, GAMSAT, at least I was allowed to, or I link with the online, you're allowed a piece of paper. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, definitely make use of it. This is one of the questions where you want to draw it out and go step by step, and then just trust yourself, basically. So we'll clear that. The next question I believe we had issues with was question 4. So we'll have a check at that. Question 4. So question 4, again, unfortunately, is to do with physics and kind of rearranging equations and stuff. So the question states that if a barometer is filled with water instead of mercury, what will the reading of the water column approximate to in millimeters of water under normal atmospheric pressure? So if we go back to the STEM, it says that this is usually mercury, but the question is basically asking us, okay, this fluid is not mercury anymore, it's water. It's under the same pressure as atmospheric pressure. How far is this stick going to go down? So where do we start? So we notice that we do have the information for mercury here, and it's we have the figures for the density and the height. But what the question really wants us, or what the question is hoping that we find out, is that the pressure is the same. So under normal atmospheric pressure, so the pressure doesn't changes. And if we remember from up in the STEM, it says that the pressure is proportional to the density, so D or whatever it is, or whatever substance we have, multiplied by the height, H. So what this question wants us to know is, it doesn't matter what liquid is in it, the pressure is still the same. So we do know now that the density of water multiplied by the height, which is millimeters height of H2O, which is how far the stick's going to move, of water, when multiplied together, is the same as the values for if you subbed in the values for mercury. So the same as D for mercury multiplied by H for mercury. Are we cool with that? Yeah? Yeah, sweet. So I'll clear that. We roll back up to our figures up here. You have that at 1 atmospheric pressure, mercury is at 700 millimeters of hydrogen, and the density is 13.6. So you're going to roll down here, and you're going to basically make yourself a little equation, which is basically 13.6 multiplied by 760 millimeters will be equal to the density of water, which if we roll back up was 1. I can't roll back because I'm writing, but the density is 1 multiplied by the height in millimeters of H2O. So is everyone following how we got to here? We know that the pressure is the same. So if you multiply the density by the height, get the pressure, same pressure. So it doesn't matter what liquid you're subbing in. If you sub the densities in, you'll get the same number. So you pop that into the equation. Because it's millimeters, you can do that quick maths. And then the answer for that becomes, it's been a while since I did math, it will become C. So if you pop that over, 1 doesn't really matter anymore. 13.6 x 760. You get that. you get something that is approximately, I think it's 10340. So 10340, closest answer is C. Quick tip for this as well, because you're kind of dealing in magnitude. So if you have a notice here, it's hundreds, thousands, 10,000, 100,000s. This 13.6 here doesn't matter. You can just equate that down to 10. It's going to give you a rough order of magnitude. So it doesn't matter if you're getting 10,360 or 10,000, it's going to be in the order of magnitude of 10,000. So that's going to be your answer. Yes, I think we might have gone a bit over time as well. Those are the two questions that we had the most trouble with, and they were kind of just assume knowledge and rearranging things. We've run out of a bit of time for more explanations, but you guys are getting a question sheet with it. So you're getting the answers, so don't fret. If you have any issues as well, you can feel free to email Sarah or email me. I think you guys might have our contact details. Be able to smash it in the chat. If you don't, let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I'm handing it over to Eliza, who's actually going to have a word with you guys, and she runs the joint. So enjoy that. Hope I helped out.
Perfect. Vanessa just asked, could you go over question 9? Kev, could you just go over a really quickly nice summary, and then we can...
Question 9. Oh God, I'm muted, am I? All right, question 9 was this one. So this, you guys are hitting me with all the assumed knowledge questions. So unfortunately, again, there's nothing too special about this question. It is just assumed knowledge, so basic chemistry knowledge. The question just asks, hey, step 2, which is this step here, what's going on to what's the reaction going on? And what's basically happening is oxygen has these little electrons here, giving it to this carbon, who's force feeding it into the bromide. Bromide disappears and has fun with itself. Net result is bromide leaves, oxygen stays there, and then the question is asking, all right, what type of reaction is this? The answer is, I think it was B, an elimination reaction. If my chemistry major still holds up, it'll be embarrassing if it isn't. But no, it isn't. No, it's a substitution reaction. Yikes. Anyway, so yes, there's no double bond being formed, and the bromide is essentially being kicked off. I think elimination reaction needs a double bond to form. It's not hydroxylation because there's no OH unit being formed. It's not none of the above because it's B. Substitution requires something else to take the space of the bromide. So for instance, if a chloride was coming in and the bromide was swapping places, that's a substitution. The oxygen, is taking the place of the bromide. So it is a substitution reaction. That is the base answer of it. Elimination needs a double bond to form. Hydroxylation needs an OH to form. There we go.
Perfect.
Butchered.
Thanks so much, Kev. Thanks so much, Jazz, as well as Sarah, who had to hop off to actually go and start a class. Hopefully that answers your question, Vanessa. Terrific. First of all, I'm going to just quickly screen share over the top of you, Kev. If you have not met me yet, yes, my name is Eliza, and usually I don't get introduced as I run the joint, but I'll take that. Essentially, I am the managing director here at Halad, which basically means I get to work with all these incredible people behind the scenes to make everything happen. So I'm just going to quickly just take, I know we're running a little bit over time, maybe 3 minutes of your time to just go through. I got a question privately before of sort of like, what are the extra resources from here? Would people have loved coming to today's event and just want some more? So I'll just go through some of that and screen share that in T-2 seconds. Okay, hopefully you can see this. Perfect. Cool. So really, basically at the end of all of our sessions, and I know a lot of you guys might be some of our intensive students, or you might have come through one of our partner clubs, but the way that we really like to teach in terms of GAMSAT is be really reflective and make sure that every time you do a piece of study that it means something. So if you could sound off in the chat below, I know Jazz and Kev would love to see this. This is what makes us so happy to see what you've learned. So if you could just pop down in the chat one thing that you've taken away from this 2 hours that you spent with our team. Elimination needs double bonds to form. There you go. anything, absolutely anything, whether it's with your study timetable, whether it is actually with content. We just love to see what it is that you have learned. And when you write it down, it actually helps you memorize as well. So thank you so much for everyone who is sounding off now. I'll let you go ahead and do that. Whilst we're sounding off all of our reflections, I'm actually just also going to drop a link as well and just walk you through really what's next from here. So if you haven't already, if you're one of our students, you probably have already, but in case you haven't, I've dropped a link down below. And if you're watching the recording, I'll put this in the description box. Join our Facebook study group. This is absolutely where we put all of our free resources. And for the student who asked me before, where can I get more of this? Essentially, we've put up a ton of these recordings on that group as well. So you can rewatch this anytime you'd like. I think we've already done like 6 or 7 of these mini mock exams with completely different content. So it can be your go-to place if you want to self-study yourself. So join that group. Tons of free resources, all free on the internet for you, and we've curated it all. The second is, if you want to now see things and not watch the recording, but actually come to live events like this, we put all of our live events up on an interactive calendar. The link is again down below. And this doesn't just encompass GAMSAT type of things, but also things beyond GAMSAT. Free workshops when you get into doing med interviews, as well as sort of other courses that complement the health space, so that you have a really well-rounded idea of how you sort of tackle those scenarios when you go into med interviews. So we really want to help you have a whole curated experience, and you can check out all those events in that calendar. And then the third link that I've dropped, so Jazz was sort of alluding to this before, our Section 2 tutors are absolutely great at marking a lot of essays, but we do have a Section 2 essay marking service, and a lot of our students who take our intensives will also do this as well. If you're going at you're going ham on your essays and you don't want to be going for quantity and you're going for quality, it's probably best that you get some professional sort of feedback after a few. And so what we do is we do cross-marking of essays. So you get 2 markers who give you an essay feedback within 48 hours. It's about, I think, $15 per essay to get cross-marked, and you get your tutor does a video for you in terms of providing feedback, as well as a rubric and like a predictive score as well. So that's always something that's great to use in the lead up to your exams for Section 2. And last but not least, and this is the thing that's sort of coming up for you guys as a cohort, that March exam is coming up. And so if you would like more content like today, brand new, fresh questions, which are very, very, very similar to the actual exam to just get some practice out, we do have online mock exams. And this is the best way for students to really practice in the lead up to the exam. So the way that it basically works is that we have 4 different exams. You can choose how many you take. If you've joined our intensives and gotten a free exam with that, you've got mock 1 free already. And essentially after each of those, Section 1 and Section 3, you'll get a bell curving of where you sit in your cohort, as well as a breakdown of the question type and how you did on those question types, so you can improve week on week. As well as for Section 2, you get 2, or you're writing 2 essays, and then your tutors will give you personalized feedback on both of them as well. So just to give you a look at the glimpse of the schedule, because I know a lot of students here might already have purchased mock 1. So they do start, and you have a 4-day window essentially to sit your exam, sort of similar to the real exam sort of thing. They start on February the 25th. You have 9 a.m. on a Thursday is when the exam opens. It closes on the Sunday at midnight. So you have those 4 days, and then you'll essentially get all your cohort results and your individual results on the following Wednesday. So that's how the schedule goes. And if you can find a friend, which I'm sure everyone who is in a Halad class definitely can, we always give a 10% off discount for when you sign up with a friend. So if that's something that you wanted more resources with, I highly recommend you just hop on someone on the Zoom right now and just ask them if you wanted to sign up together. And it's just really easy. Go onto the website and using the link, and you can get the 10% off discount code off there. So last but not least, I just wanted to, I'm just checking the cool, perfect comments right now. And if everyone could just give a massive thank you with a thumbs up react to Jazz and Kev, as well as Sarah in thoughts. I'm sure you guys have taken away a lot and have learned a lot from these guys. They love to be here and do these mass classes with you guys, just because unfortunately, getting GAMSAT resources can sometimes be quite inaccessible, and we just want to be the absolute opposite of that. And it's thanks to tutors like Jazz and Kev who make that all possible. Last but not least, as a way to say thank you to the tutors, they have a feedback form which I've dropped as a link. If you guys could just take 2 minutes of your time to just fill out that feedback form, that would be absolutely great. It helps us curate the experience and make it even better for you guys next time. This mini mock series and this mini mock sort of format is not going away anytime soon. So if you ever wanted to come back, we just want to make it better for you. And whilst you're taking those 2 minutes to do that feedback form, I'm going to just quickly play a video of our previous mission trips. All donations from events like these go towards our mission trips. And I just wanted to show you what that's like in country and sort of the impact that we're able to make and sort of the experience it is for people who volunteer with us. If you were interested in that, again, the link is down below. But more than welcome to leave at any point from here. So I'm just going to quickly play that video as you exit. Perfect. Awesome. Thanks so much for staying on, guys. We really appreciate it. Hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Need a professional website? I created one for our startup using...
Perfect. All right, cool. We can end the record there, Kev.
Sweet.